All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Purnell, for being here with us today. My name is Paul Ortiz. We're at the National Park Service doing oral history interviews. We're just so grateful that you're sitting down and taking a lot of your time to talk with us about your experiences and your reflections on the Underground Railroad. So thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a pleasure, an honor.
Thank you. And I wonder if we could start, if you wouldn't mind stating your full name, and if you could just spell it for the record.
Okay, yeah, Bruce Purnell, Brucepurnell.
Thank you. And what is your birth date and place of birth?
11/2/1964, Washington, D.C.
Excellent. Thank you. Can you tell us, Bruce, a little bit about your experiences growing up, what life was like as a child, like something in the community, your family?
Yeah, my grandfather, Lee Purnell, he was the dean of engineering at Howard University. So the childhood ended up being some, kind of academia and DC. So I got the city of DC and then academia and then trying to figure it all out. Like, what is freedom? Since freedom was such a big deal, but what is it? Like, I know as a child, I wanted to feel it. This thing called freedom. What does it feel like? Why, if it's supposed to be, why don't I feel like that's the case? Like, having to know different things about navigating life, like the dangers of just being a young black man in America, just being able to navigate that safely. And why do we have to, go through that if we've been through a history of searching for liberation? So that's kind of what it was. A lot of questions, a lot of expectations, pressure of achievement. Like it was definitely, the expectation was that I was going to achieve something, but still not really knowing what that meant. As I started to get into, and started to understand and learn who my ancestors were and the idea of the station masters and conductors and the Underground Railroad, like what that meant for me. And it kind of shaped my destiny as I really started to understand and, said that the power of a legacy to really, understand like, oh, wow, that's why I feel like that. That's why I think like that. It's in my DNA, it's in my, genes. So it kind of shaped where, how I moved.
How did you first begin to learn that knowledge about the Underground Railroad? Was it an elder? Was it something you...
My father, the first story of John Jones, and not even understanding what slavery was, he explained, but your grandfather, John Jones, he had to ride through the middle of the night from Tennessee to North Carolina to get his freedom papers, to actually, and I didn't really know what that was, but I know that this magical character rolled through the night and he came back into the trial and he got his freedom and then went to Chicago. And I was like, wow, man, what's the ride through the night to get to get your freedom papers? But, so that's the first thing. And then I was really interested. I was the child that was interested in the genealogy. So one day my father gave me this big, almost like a big duffel bag, right? So in it was pictures of John Jones, pictures of William Whipper, pictures of Mary Ann Shadd, the deeds, the wills, when Absalom, which is my grandpa, Absalom Shadd, and Osborne Anderson was in D.C. with the restaurant before he went to the farm. Then they found out Osborne Anderson is the only one that made it out of the Harper's Ferry piece, that they lived on a farm together, and just all the different stuff, like, wow. And I had the actual, the different, the material in front of me, right? Pictures of Frederick Douglass and John Jones' home. It was a scene, and the fact that they were friends. I said, what does that mean? They were actually friends? Yeah, they were really good friends. And so, that way, I didn't know what it all meant. I knew it was important and exciting, though, and it grounded me in finding out these pieces.
How old were you when you started, when your father gave you the bag? And
About 15.
Okay. Up to that point, did your family, what did you learn about like elders, grandparents, aunts, uncles? Did your family talk a lot about history in the family?
Until later, not totally understood. Because initially, I didn't, I didn't really know what it meant culturally. Like when I did find that out, though, when I got the information, and I started to ask questions. Who was John Jones? And then to find out that so William Billy Lee married, his grandson married Lavinia, which is John and Mary Jones' daughter. And he was enslaved by George Washington, the only one to get his freedom. He rode with him through the American Revolution and was the only one. Looks like they would have been friends, but he was absent in history. You don't see William Billy Lee. Like you may see him now if you go and you see some a little bit of stuff about him. But the fact that, and he stayed at Mount Vernon. But then I didn't really know anything about it, and then finding out like all these different stories. I'm like, wow, I can't let my ancestors, like their journey, go unresolved. So I'm thinking fulfilling the purpose of my ancestors has to mean something. And again, like as I started to learn more and more and more, I really started to respect the fact that, especially like a John Jones, who's like one of the wealthiest Black men in the country, but it's not about the wealth; it's about liberation. So that money goes into the pot to actually help everybody become free. It kind of grounded me out of commercialism. I said, nah, I'm not. It just because my generation, we were the mall babies. We sent to the mall on Saturday, so we got sent to an institutional commercialism, for just to hang out. Yeah. So the idea of finding something else is more important, the greater good, the liberation of everybody. So you have humanity, and also feeling that my ancestors believed in this American experiment, right? So, they put everything into it. They believed that we could actually live together. So we could release past trauma and we could move to transformation through a vibration of love. They really believe that. So I have to respect that and say, let's make this happen. Let's really try this. Let's get it right.
Very cool. Growing up, was religion a big part of that? Did some of these moral ideas, did they come through religion, spirituality?
Spirituality.
Okay.
My father, it's funny, my mother came from Goldsboro, North Carolina. My father came from Canada, California, and he said that he grew up Catholic, so he went to church enough for everybody. That's the way he felt about it. But so it was more spirituality. It was kind of being a universalist, like respecting how anybody, how they worship, as long as it's a vibration of love. And yeah, I kind of came up that way.
When you first started, learning about John Jones, what did you really learn about him at first? And do you remember the kind of the impact it had on you?
Yeah, that's how I really learned about slavery. So he was born free, but had to be indentured to a guy. So he was born in North Carolina, so I had to go to Tennessee and to become a tailor, right? So because they were scared even though he was born free, that they would enslave him because you can't walk around free in North Carolina as a young Black man. So when he was indentured to, his name's Claire, I can't remember his name. So he transitioned. So the siblings didn't acknowledge. They said, no, you were a slave the whole time. And that's why he had to ride through and get his freedom papers and stand trial. At the same time, and it was a love story also, it was very powerful because Mary Jones, she was Mary Richardson then, they moved, because it was getting horrible in Tennessee, they moved to Alton, Illinois. So once he went and they went to trial and he got his freedom, he went to Alton and they got married and they went to Chicago with $3 in their pocket and had to get freedom papers. And I actually have the freedom, it's in the museum, Chicago Museum now, but they were in our possession. We get to actually physically see the freedom papers that that he started.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Because as thinking about this, it just got harder and harder, even if you had freedom papers in a state like Tennessee or North Carolina, 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, it just gets harder and harder because people are always trying to re-enslave you.
Oh yeah, you get pulled over to the side of the road and here's my freedom papers. What? Yeah, we didn't see any freedom papers. Yeah.
Exactly. Did you, Bruce, as you were beginning to learn this, were there other, how did it impact your, your elders and family when you began to show interest? Did you all start talking as a family about this, or was it something like you kind of more went off on your own?
Yeah, we started talking about it because I had so many questions, and again, it shaped my life, and it turned my life because it's interesting because in DC, it's like through shaping of the media, the most attractive thing is something related to being in the hood in some way, and things very risky and reckless, but that's being promoted. So it caught me basically because without that history of my knowledge of self, who knows? Who knows? Because the most attractive thing was in the street. It wasn't like that. That's where the ground of peace was. So that pulled me out of it. And I was like, dang, what how horrible would it be for me to violate the legacy of my ancestors by operating another way that doesn't respect, the journey and the sacrifices that were made before me. So, yeah, it was definitely an anchoring piece, and it gave me a sense of what I could be accountable to, because other stuff didn't make any sense for real for me. They tell you, just do this because you're supposed to. Where's my why? I needed a why as a child. I needed a why all the way through. Why am I doing this? Or just go get good. Why? What does this mean? What is this? Yeah. And nobody could explain the why. It's like just forced compliance, is the socialization process. It's like, no, just do it. Why? Because I said so, that piece. I need a little more than that to ground. So that gave me the more. That gave me the why. Wow. Why? Because my ancestors sacrificed their lives for liberation. So I figure the goal is liberation. The goal wasn't money, so it's not chasing paper money. It's like something bigger than that. So, luckily, I think it really grounded me that way.
Very cool. Bruce, as a young man coming of age, where you're learning this and you're gaining this sense of self based on identity and history, where did that take you in life, as a teenager and then transitioning into young adulthood? Where did your journey take you at that point?
I believed I could win, and looking at self-efficacy piece, right? Efficacy went way high. Whatever it is I wanted to do, I could do. It's just what that was going to be, and finding that out. But it took me from being an average student to being an A student. It took me from not really understanding, just not really caring, to reading everything, to wanting to know, to being active, becoming active in my own life. And now he said, you don't have to be an extra in your own movie, because we all need to be stars of our own movie. You don't have to be an extra. So in being it gave me that kind of grounding. And also in terms of future orientation. So if you think why would I sacrifice the present for a future I don't believe in? So believing in a future, it is everything, as far as shaping a destiny. And I felt that I had a destiny. I had something to do. I had a purpose. I had divine gifts I had to identify. So I did my divine gifts and all those different things that weren't normal. I'm talking to my friends, what are you? I became weird, but I was okay with being weird. I was I'd rather be weird than cool. I did that piece. I felt cool was the lamest thing ever. You can't do it. You can't experience anything. It's just so to be grounded in that, it became what my life energy was connected to, and it changed. Because I was, but see, I also played sports, so I was kind of a star athlete my whole life, so I got that piece also. But it's that wasn't even that important. It was just something to do. It was really the what's next.
Mm-hmm. Well, what was next for you when because you started doing really well in school and getting really good grades? Were you like thinking of like a career in something, or were you thinking like professional thing?
Yeah, I was thinking something. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But when freshman year, that first psychology class, I loved it. Like I loved psychology, sociology, philosophy, that side, and math also. But psychology, what I fell in love with, and I'm a psychologist today because of it. Like I fell in love with that piece, and because I wanted to know, like why we think what we think, and how what we think ends up being related to what we do. Mm-hmm. And the motivation and alignment, like where's that come from? So like in middle school, again, that forced compliance piece, they tell you just go here, you hear the bell, you're supposed to move with the bell. And not really understanding, and very few people listen when you're young. So elementary and middle school, like actually, you may not get what do you think and how you feel. Like, you just do this. So the idea of, move to a place knowing that I have a voice and my voice is going to mean something. And it is an option. It's not just, you find a job that makes some money. Because people tell you like, when I went in, it was do computers because computers are going to pay.
Oh, into college.
Yeah,
Okay.
But even in high school and stuff, computers was the way to go because that paid the most.
Right.
And it's like not what you love, not what you gifted at, just do what pays the most. And, that didn't really work. So, the idea of having so much more to pull from, I heard all of that, but I said, no, I'm gonna do what I love.
Yeah.
And it was psychology and still today, still psychology.
So in college, you took psychology classes.
Yeah.
And which college did you go to?
Bowie State University, undergrad, University of Cincinnati, graduate, and then I finished at University of Lagos in Nigeria.
Okay, nice. Excellent. And can you share with me, Bruce, like when you remember first starting to share stories about your family's history or the Underground Railroad with other people around you?
Probably college.
College, okay.
Probably college, and we had a Black History course, and like 3 of my ancestors were in the Black History course. So as I talked to the professor, he was saying, and I think the first was it was Mary Ann Shadd was the first thing to say. Then it was William Whipper. He was talking about the undergrad. I said, that's my family. He said, well, it's your family. And then John Jones was in. He was actually because it was Dr. Kondo. He really had a knowledge base and almost like he did research and stuff. And he talked about people we wouldn't normally be in history. So that was the first. So I started talking about it, and people started asking me, what do that's your grandfather, or stuff. So that's when we really started talking about it.
It's incredible. How would you, and because you knew about these amazing individuals, and they weren't just like names in a textbook, were you able to like share with your professors or friends, like, I know these people, they're family, like this is what their lives mean.
Yeah.
Were you able to do any of that?
Oh yeah, and I mean, yeah, especially when it came to characters like, for example, like Martin Delaney. Well, so James Whipper Purnell, that's my grandfather, but he was raised by William Whipper, but he was his nephew, but he raised him as a son. But he was a secretary for Martin Delaney's the Back to Africa piece, where the idea, like when he went to see like what was going to happen with us after slavery. But Martin Delaney went into a big depression, but it's not really in the books because like he couldn't get into Harvard. He got in, but they didn't, because of racism, he really didn't get to go to medical school and stuff. And I knew about this, and so we were like talking about him, that, like Martin Delaney, but as it relates to my grandfather and what they were doing, what that was like. They had an actual railroad in Philadelphia, and they're going through. They had a railroad and a lumber yard, but they had empty boxcars, and they would help enslave people get through, like freedom seekers get through in the boxcars and move them like in different places and stuff. And being able to really just talk about that, firsthand, this happened, like this is what they were doing then. And then it was interesting because I went to Chatham to the Historical Society. You can see the stock for the railroad and different stuff. They have it in Chatham. Like, wow, that's that. And the Don settlement, when you in Uncle Tom's Cabin, they have a big thing with Wayne Whipper when they had the laundromat and the ice cream shop, the hotel and stuff from the Don settlement. And it's just surreal. Like, it's like, wow, man, this is in the books, but and scarcely, it's not, the whole story is not told, but it really should be a part of history. But yeah, I was able to talk about it with professors, and professors, like, they wanted to know, well, what do you know about this? Well, what about this? And I had a lot of information too, so I would bring in like letters from Frederick Douglass to William Whipper that I have, and different pieces I would bring it in so he could actually see. The color conventions, like the actual manuals from the color conventions and stuff, I would bring that into class and we would talk about them. So,
what is it about the Underground Railroad that people don't know, or what are some of the things about the Underground Railroad that people don't know that they should know?
Wow. A few things. One, how important freedom was, that it was that important. That, say from Eastern Shore to Canada, that you could leave with clothes on your back, and you have to, with sure uncertainty, but you have to trust people along the way. And you had that level of trust and that level of motivation that you would leave, and you could make it on foot from here to Canada. And the people that you meet along the way, that, they look like all of us, and that piece, like, they really understand. No, it's not so much a race piece as it is an energy piece. Like, who's who? Like, I think that racism hides behind greed. You know what I mean? Like, so you don't get to the real energy because you're deflected and it looks like something else. But I think those pieces, and I think more of us want freedom. More of us want liberation and shared humanity than we don't. Like, and I think this, the corrupt, abusive, manipulative kind of energy it's the minority, but it's in the leadership. And if we all knew that the majority wants something else, we could really make some changes. And so I think that piece, if we really paid attention to it, it would be a model for us now.
Mm-hmm. What's holding us back?
We're scared. We're scared of that it won't be better. We've been, again, that forced compliance piece. We're led to believe that it's just the way it has to be. Even the fact that, race isn't a biological construct. It's a social construct, but we can't give it up. None of us can. We can't give it up because we think we have to use the labels. Like, we'll rather connect by things that make us different than things that make us the same. And there's so much that actually makes us the same. Like, so many things we could connect on and build on. But we're, we're scared, and there's a minority that is profiting off of this. It's minorities profiting off of wars. So they want the wars to go on because they're making trillions of dollars because the war's going on. So the propaganda that goes out, and now, like, the way the media is able to disseminate information, that it controls our desires, it controls our belief system. So if we could unplug for a second, and just for a second, we may get to know each other. And that's why, we just don't know. We don't know what it means to unplug from it and really come and share in humanity. And we don't know that it's enough for everybody on the planet. We don't know that. That actually, if we could release, we could all have everything we want, but we can't have more than we want. Well, we can have everything we want. You just can have more. The idea of, that it's okay not to have more than you need.
It's amazing because just the three interviews that we've done so far, with you, with Tony Cohen, with Bob Seeley, I mean, in some ways, there's a lot of connections between the stories that you all are saying. And one of the connections I see right off the bat is you're talking about people who had to go through the exact same thought process to find their liberation, because people, they had this incredible wall around them. They were incarcerated, and people would have been, I'm not saying it was easy to stay incarcerated, but to think about the terror of trying to strike for your freedom, I mean, my God.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what you're trying to do is kind of bring that knowledge from the Underground Railroad, the thought processes that enslaved people had to go through. And then there's the trust piece, because it's working not just with black people or white people, but it's people trying to work together.
That's right.
To find freedom. And if I understand what you're saying now, like, we're still in the same situation in some ways.
Yeah, we call it a movement. So our movement is the Overground Freeway, because we say, like, we'll never have physical freedom without mental liberation. So like the Underground Railroad is about physical freedom. The Overground Freeway is mental liberation, because it's mental now. It's mental now. Like, and at least before you would know. And again, you think about it like a concept like there wasn't any homelessness. There wasn't any black homelessness during slavery. You better not be somewhere and not have a home. Like, you know what I mean? So I wonder how we have black homelessness now. I mean, what does that mean mentally? Like, what does it mean how do you go from being collective to individualism when it's such a short history of, it's like, what's the incentive in what we're experiencing now? And now, like, so, and not too many people are happy. On both sides, the perpetrator or the survivor is not going to be. I mean, it doesn't lead to happiness. So if you're not happy, then give it a shot.
Right.
You can always go back to being miserable.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Bruce, about some what you view as being some of the most memorable stories that you know about the Underground Railroad in terms of people finding liberation. I wonder if you wouldn't mind walking me through again. I mean, I know we started with the John Jones story, but if you could kind of take us behind the scenes to that story of how he found what he found. Okay.
So and I talked about when he had to go get his freedom papers, and he went to court and they said, "Oh yeah, you're free." So he went to Alton, Illinois, and got his love of his life, Mary, and now they headed to Chicago. And Alton was something else also, and because initially they were going to stay in Alton, but they did the Reverend Lovejoy in Alton, and he went, and so that's where the slave catchers were, kind of setting up shop. So getting to Chicago with $3 in his pocket, but he was a tailor. He started the business and met some phenomenal people that his brothers, L.C. Freer, Charles Dyer. They had a society pulled them in. It was like, look, like, this is what we do. And it was the kind of the Underground Railroad then. And he became a station master, but then he learned to read, and the whole piece was about about liberation. They had, and when both Frederick Douglass and John Brown and others came to, that's where they stayed. And when they would bring groups in, and they would house them, and with that piece. And so as they started to build that, they taught him the real estate trade, and he learned real estate stuff, and really started to become really wealthy. And he was leading the conventions as they went, because it was about we're moving toward freedom. He
like
also was
the colored convention movement.
The colored convention movement, right? Yeah. And like John Jones was responsible for leading the repealing of the black codes in Chicago. He had a pamphlet, and he met with the legislators, and was the first African American, also the whole office in Chicago. and Paul Bearer Abraham Lincoln's funeral, the organizer for the Civil War, like whatever was going on, like they were connected to it. They have a Masonic Lodge number 7. John Jones number 7 is named after him. He was a worshipful master, well, past worshipful master, but he in the Masonic Lodge, and that was life. It was about what freedom would be. And I mean, they lost a lot in the Chicago fire, but they also the movement. Like, so with him, like, so him and Frederick Douglass being really good friends, and then him and William Whipper being friends, as you know, like his granddaughter married William Whipper's grandson. So that's Chicago and Philadelphia coming together. And good friends with both Abraham and grandfather Absalom Shadd. So the Shadds, the Whippers, the Purnells, the Joneses, and they were all really good friends, along with, colleagues in the struggle for freedom.
What did it mean to be a station master? You hear that phrase, the Underground Railroad, but a lot of people don't know, what did that involve?
Yeah. Then you had the home. When they made the call and told you, I know William Whipper he talked about the fact that William Still called and said, I got 16, you have to be able to house them. Whatever's going on, you have to, so you have the house and on the site. So when it comes to when freedom seekers are coming your way, you'll get that call. You have to both maintain it and know what's next, and so you in that movement, they know you're that spot on. You're that spot on the map, and you're responsible for it. Mm-hmm. So you can't drop the ball. In this case, you can't drop the ball.
Was John Jones? I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you is if I don't know the answer. But was he involved in vigilance committees also?
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
And can you explain what was a vigilance committee?
Yeah. So the entire deal, in the idea of one dealing with the propaganda with slavery, but dealing with both challenging that and moving toward a completely different ideology that deals with everybody freedom, the rights of being having freedom. And so I mean the organization of it on the front line was organizing the ideology, so to speak, and I guess it's not anti-propaganda, but the idea of putting out the message, whereas John Jones, they connected the Frederick Douglass had a newspaper that they mostly posted in, but on say the Philadelphia side, it was the Moral Reform Society. That was the kind of vigilance piece, and they would put together and they were pumping a value system, a different value system. I think that's the most important part about it. How do you organize to challenge this piece?
What was the value system that they had that was distinct for them?
Even so if you think with Christianity, the sort of idea that slavery's not Christian. So even though so the other side, he would say, oh, this is a slavery Bible where we can manipulate it to say that it's slavery. No, I say, no, this isn't Christian. So if you're a Christian, you can't be for slavery. So that's a challenging is challenging that premise, and which was needed because some people just wouldn't know. Some people wouldn't know. They just whatever the status quo is, they're going to go along with it. But if they actually knew that they were violating something that they believed in, look, I believe that I'm a Christian, but I think that this slavery is Christian. We need to discuss it for real, in another sense, because it shouldn't be any way that can hold up. I mean, if you look at the fact that and quote unquote another race could be created, what they was called mulatto, where'd that come from? How can there be that many babies, interracial babies being born if it's illegal for that connection. So what do you call that? But you just, so you can't just skip over it. Let's look at it. Like, what's happening here? When do we deal with the rape? When do we deal with it? Like, so is rape Christian? Nobody would say no, but the idea that we can advance in a premise that, well, that's not raping an enslaved person isn't rape. So, and then the question, what do we do with all the babies now? And so, yeah, so it's a lot of pieces that we never dealt with. And, and so today is my belief that a lot of the problems that we deal with are because we have unresolved trauma because we never dealt with this. Like, we never had the opportunity to heal. And I think we got to heal together. But we never had the opportunity. We just went to the next level. So we went from slavery to post-Reconstruction Jim Crow, right? We go from Jim Crow to the assassination of leaders in the civil rights movement, the hoses, the dogs, right? You go from that to the school to prison pipeline, the war on drugs. Now we know we never get the opportunity to ground ourselves and say, look, when do we heal from the first traumatic experience? Talking about ACEs, you know what I mean? How many ACEs are we talking about here? Like, when we started with about 100 ACEs off the beginning, before when we learn about this vicarious trauma, when we first learn what happened, and we never get to heal from it. We just have to hold it in and be like, what do I do with this?
Exactly. One of the questions that we're trying to get at is, different places that could possibly be added to the network to freedom. Do you know of any specific places from your family history that could be added to the network of freedom?
I think John Jones' place just got added, and I know Diane said Graceland Cemetery was just added to it. That spot, probably Masonic Lodge number 7. That was a spot like John Jones number 7. I don't know that the William Whippers piece is really added. They have one marker up on Lombard Street in Philadelphia, but the railroad, the other spots in Lancaster, different places. I don't think that those spots are added. I don't know, because I've been trying to even find like Absalom's the farm when they met before the Harper's Ferry raid.
Yeah.
I don't know that, but it's in Canada. I don't know. Is this just in the States, or is Canada included in this piece? But the farm where they met before Harper's Ferry raid, that would probably be a spot.
When you go around and think about some of these places in your work, are people really aware of all this the incredible history? Like when we were up interviewing Bob Seeley yesterday, and I asked him, I said, are people around here, do they know this stuff? And he's like, well, probably.
Yeah.
Is that your experience too? Like, are people, they know it or they not know it? Or like what needs to happen differently?
I don't know. Even the connection with us and the Quakers. So it's like we should be, the Quakers should be our partners in all this. I mean, but we don't know. We don't know that we were able to go to school when it was illegal to go to school in the Quaker schools. We don't know the story of Thomas Garrett and what it meant and that. Again, the energy, like, who was for freedom? We don't know who was for freedom. We know the characters that they give us, like there's 3 or 4 characters that they give us. Like, we don't know. Even past here, we don't know internationally what this means. Like, we should be connected with everybody on this planet. That's for freedom. Anybody that's being oppressed on this planet, we should be connected with them and helping them with their movement. When brothers and sisters come into this country and they can't, they need help navigating this space with language, we should be helping. Number one, but we don't, we just don't know who we are. We don't know the history, because to know who you are, you have to know the history. Like, it's not there. I think intentionally, it's been kept away from us. You're dealing with it in Florida. Like, they don't want us to know. They do not want us to know because they're so scared that it's going to challenge the status quo. If we know, then that should change our behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have, one of the things Tony Cohen told me was really interesting was Juneteenth. When you were growing up, was Juneteenth a thing? Did people, or they?
I found out later that, that I did it. It took Texas a couple more years to find out that slavery was supposed to be over. Initially, I didn't understand, what we were celebrating.
Yeah.
Initially, I didn't but yeah, no, it wasn't a thing. I didn't find out later on, what the whole deal was, that.
Were there other types of commemorations of emancipation, like say Watch Night, or were there any of those traditions that you remember when you were growing up, or did?
Not really. I mean, it was hard to get Black History Month. It was the day or whatever, the week and then the month. But I feel like even that's being marginalized now. It's, you figure if Budweiser's a sponsor.
Oh, no. Yeah. What are some of the, because you do this work everywhere you go, when you kind of bring it back to think about your family history and your connectivity to people here and all over the world, what are some of the main points of, if someone said, look, Mr. Purnell, we need 3 takeaway points from the Underground Railroad, what would those be? What are those?
Freedom's essential to the soul will be one. If a people had ability to trust with their lives on the line, people that they don't know on an entire journey with absolutely nothing, then we have the capability to trust today. Don't believe that we don't have the capability of trusting because it's in our DNA. And the third piece will be love wins. Love wins, and I would stress that, look, love wins. I don't care. It's something about love that it has the power to transform every other energy. So when it shows up, it transforms. And that I think it's about that, because there's no way to even have the Underground Railroad without love. There's some people that weren't for this. There's some people that couldn't go along with it. That's the only way you can have that entire movement that's moving another way. So I think that we need to reflect on those pieces and know, we moved from the Underground Railroad to the Overground Freeway because it's mental now. Not so much physical, but it's mental, but it's not gone. It's still here. It's still a plantation. We just use money now. Only difference now, I got to pay you. But now I just, the continuum of pay, it just be different. So, you'll get this because somebody else gets that much more. So it's still, a plantation. So we had to take the energy out, and people say, well, you don't have to reconstruct the wheel. Yeah, you got to rebuild the wheel. This wheel's the Firestone wheel that went off and people crashed. So it's okay to reinvent the wheel in this case, but it's done and just moving to an ideology of freedom. We have, that's the only way. You're not going to find racial equity within white supremacy. It doesn't exist. So you can ask for it all you want to. It don't exist there. It's not, it's not a subset of white supremacy isn't racial equity. So you gotta, that has to be, deconstructed and then something else reconstructed.
Yeah. There's a couple other follow-up questions I wanted to ask, but I also want to make sure that I asked about if you have any photographs or documents or objects that you'd like to share with the National Park Service. It would be wonderful.
Oh yeah.
What we do, because working with the Park Service, so for example, yesterday Bob's gave us, family photo albums or, family genealogies and things. We can digitize those, make copies available to the Park Service,
Sure.
get back to you. So, I just want to let you know about that.
Okay, I have a bunch of stuff. So yeah.
That would be
Yeah, I'm willing.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Diane will follow up, with you about
Okay.
that. At some point, we got to go back to Florida. But still, yeah. But yeah. But and then the thing, I was going to ask you because you mentioned like the Florida thing, and I know that in your work and looking through, the material that you provided and that this incredible work you do with your life and education and uplifting people's spirits, how do you deal with that opposition, the people who say, and they may not be bad people, they may be just like, they're just afraid. And they're saying, well, we don't want kids in Florida to know African American history because there's something there that we're afraid of. Like, how do you deal with that kind of opposition if people tell you, well, this Underground Railroad stuff is that's the past. Just let it lie. How do you deal with that?
We moved from protest to building. The energy that I would put into debating with somebody about truth, I just really release that, pray for them, and we're building what we want. And that's how we move. And like we're, because it's just truth. Like it's, when you have to call it critical race theory, it can be called history. It's just, so we move and another piece, like, so we move and love is our vibration. And we believe that, again, we have to heal together. So, it's not even about like the conflict. It's about what we build and how we educating. But, I think it's going to have to come full circle. Because things like this, as you compile this piece, this is going to be a phenomenal project. Like and then now this piece is available. Hey, that's truth. That's truth, man. And the more of us that really move that way, and we, move past, because everybody, it's always gonna be somebody against something. Like, so I'm like, really, I don't even have time to deal with that, really. So, and there's a lot of people, they're against everything, man. Like, they're against, I was told initially, I was told that in psychology, I really couldn't use love because it's not smart. It's specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-based. So because you can't measure it, you can't use love as a methodology. I was like, well, you can't even have a methodology without love. You're talking about mental wellness. You can have mental wellness without love, trust, culture, hope. So I was like, well, I hear you, but now they come full circle, and it's like, hey, we need you to come do this love, the love presentation. I'm like,
But that's a critical part of the story you told about John Jones, right?
Yeah.
And that you learned as a youth and as you got older. But that's something you rarely would see. Like if a history textbook talks about the Shad family, John Jones, Frederick Douglass, they don't talk about love.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's like really striking. I just thought about that based on what you're saying. They don't talk about love.
Yeah. It's the entire, it's almost like every institution had its mission to maintain the status quo. So it's some things that they really don't, I don't know if they don't want us to know, but they don't know how. Like, so if you talk about love, some things you can't do. Like if people are starving somewhere and you have restaurants throwing enough food away to feed everybody because it's just, you can't talk about love because it's gonna throw you off because you can't do it if you vibrate that, you just couldn't consciously do it. Things we do, we just couldn't do. Like we have, when you go past, we have a large homeless population, and we got a bunch of vacancies. Even within the housing, we have vacancies that people could, but we just I don't know. We need another way to look at everything, and the idea that they did, they were heavily into spirituality. I know. Because with William Whip and the Moral Reform Society, he caught a lot of criticism because he was like no drinking for anybody. You can consume no alcohol because right now you can't be drunk in the street. He had big criticism. He got criticism for wanting to drop colored. We're colored. They said, oh, you're not proud about being black because you want to drop colored. He said, no, the label's not gonna work. Marianne Shad said that you don't want to move into a place of ever being dependent upon anybody. you can't be dependent. If we go into this piece needing subsidies, we're not going to make it. We have to be independent and stuff. And she stressed that. She stressed it. But, you know, so it's things that we need to know about who they were, like what do they believe in, and it's not just cliche, it's real. Like, you know, it was some pieces for our, you know, that dealt with our liberation. And you see that, you know, the subsidy piece isn't working for us. Like the disparity and the variance among the African American community it doesn't make sense sometimes. Anytime.
Wow. This has been an incredible experience for me. And are there questions that anyone else would like to ask Donovan, Adolfo, Diane?
I'd be interested if you have any anecdotes about John Jones and Frederick Douglass, what they might do when they visited with each other.
Really, because of the convention thing was the kind of the movement of the time. A lot of stuff about the conventions and what that would mean and what would be on the agenda, and how to get a groundswell and yeah. And being scared about John Brown. They wasn't really for that at the time. It's like but you know.
Do you have any stories or insights about John Jones and his view of John Brown? Because I know Frederick Douglass was opposed to the raid.
He was opposed to the raid, and they were friends. He said that that's not the way that we need to move right now. They didn't think it would be successful. And he suggested that it didn't happen. They said Frederick Douglass was supposed to come.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At one point.
Ended up going. Was he going to Europe or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think about what Malcolm X said when someone said, what can white people do in the movement, right?
Yeah.
You need more John Browns.
Yeah. Yeah.
The courage of your conviction.
Yeah.
That's
I had a joke about my John Brown litmus test for white people. It was like, do you like John Brown? Yes or no? Like, it's like, then I know who you are.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, as we, Bruce, as we kind of wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add? And we can do follow-ups too. We can. You have our contact information. If you have other things you want to share in the future, just let me know. But like for now, is there anything that you want to add that we haven't touched upon?
I guess it's a statement that the Underground Railroad history has huge implications for now, for us understanding what we will be accountable to and what happened before us. It does, because there's a huge void about what happened. And even like post Underground Railroad, the fact that William Whipple Purnell, which is the grandson, was a doctor, and he had a practice in Oakland and D.C. We don't see that in history. We don't know what happened after this. So they had the Negro Leagues also after, and that was the next political piece before the civil rights. It was they would meet at the baseball games, and there was a lot of descendants in the Pythians was the Philadelphia team. And so they had the big baseball. They came to town, they had the parades and stuff. They would come to town, they played baseball, but then they had the meetings about look how we navigate this piece, this post-slavery piece, and that was next. And you really don't see that in history. You don't see that part of the Negro Leagues. We hear about the Negro Leagues, but the fact that was the next part where we actually met about liberation. So.
Do you think there's a connection between the Underground Railroad, its legacies, and secret societies, like say the Masons, the Pythians? Because it seems to me like those are organizations that in the 1880s and 1890s white supremacy is always looking on. They're always claiming, well, things are happening in these, in these colored secret societies. Do you think that those are places we need to look for those legacies?
Most definitely. Because I knew when I was probably 15 that I was going to be a Mason, because all the way to John Jones, the lodge is named after him. Everyone in our next generation is a Mason or an Eastern Star. And, the idea that for brothers and sisters who wouldn't read or write, a lot of times that's how you kept your land, because you would teach you how to sign. You couldn't even sign. We lost hundreds and thousands of acres because all you could do is put an X because we couldn't sign, and they took the land. So all kind of different things. But yeah, definitely, it was a piece, and they tried to burn it down. Even the charter for Prince Hall Charter, they tried to burn it down because they didn't want it to happen, like the racism in this country. But because Prince Hall was fighting with with Scotland, and other things happened, and he was able to have that charter, but they didn't want that to happen because of that. It's hard to challenge something that you hold as your premise. Yeah. Take Marcus Garvey. He used the Bible. He had his mentors were ministers. So they had to deport him. That's probably the only reason he was assassinated, because it just, they just had to get him out of here. We get you out of here,
Yeah, right.
I have a question real quick. Based off your siblings, your family, how has all this knowledge, research that has been accrued over time and passed down, how have your family handled that, like your siblings? I just want to, just thinking about it, it's speaking to a descendant, it's one thing, it's very powerful, and I just want to see what impacts does that have, not just as an individual, but also around your family and your community even, because I'm sure they're all doing amazing things just by, listening this and just connecting back to that past and identifying with that.
Yeah. Well, when our family's coming around, I stressed it so much. I was like, I wanted them to be interested initially, but it's hard because you're fighting against a commercial media that's coming in, and it doesn't, it's not cool. But now, they're coming around, and my grandson Cannon, who's 9 years old, they did the Tribe magazine did a story on John Jones, and they came and did a photo shoot with him as being the fifth great grandson, and he's on the cover. And him and Chance the Rapper and some other people, but he's like, you talk about it. I didn't want to go to John Jones as my grandfather and stuff, so I was so happy about that. And I want him to know, that's one of the most important things, like the power of a legacy. I want him to know who he is and not have to even be challenged with this is who you are, this is what you connected to. And our purpose of our family is liberation on this planet. The purpose of our family is shared humanity on this planet, and through the history of the Underground Railroad to now. And now for us, it's the Overground Freeway, which is our movement, but now it's for shared humanity and liberation, and the grandchildren know that's what it's about.
Truly love the way that you mentioned mental liberation. It's not just anymore the physical aspect where you gain that freedom, but the mental.
That's
and
right.
That's what we got to deal with today's time. And I think those are questions that we need to, further on develop. Like, how do we liberate ourselves mentally, where we're truly free by, just our surrounding capitalism, whatever it may be, materialism, and social media, whatever it may be. How do we escape from that to liberate ourselves?
That's right.
Is there a solution for that? Or thoughts on that?
I think first thing we have to do is unplug, and there's some major premises. So so once you unplug, what do you replace it with? One, if we all know that we're valuable enough to love and be loved, that we can atone, forgive, heal, grow, thrive, and transform, and that we don't have to be extras in our own movie because we're stars. We say however it happens. So 250 million cells fertilize one egg. That makes every birth a miracle, no matter how it happened, right? So you're a miracle, right? And you have a divine gift and divine calling, so that separates you. And let's figure out what you're great at. Because if you don't feel that love, you're gonna be looking for it somewhere. You'll be out looking for that validation, looking for that appreciation, looking to be somewhere where you fit. You say, there's an African proverb that says, home isn't where you live, home is where you belong. So that piece where you feel that appreciation, that love, I think that's where it is. Like, you know, because it's not a money piece. We think it's a money piece. It's a love piece.
Okay. So it seems like, kind of like you were mentioning earlier, that, you know, you want your grandson to acknowledge where he came from, right? It seems like certain traits, courage, you know, like respect for where you belong, you know, these are inherited traits, right? These are traits that you learn from your grandfather, your father, etc. Do you know, can you speak about that point a little bit more? And do you have any particular stories that your grandfather, you know, kind of, from your grandfather, from your father, about how he taught you to kind of maybe exhibit those traits, or kind of, or how they bonded up with other things?
I know. Well, one thing my father stressed to me, and was that no matter what happens around you, make sure that you do what you're supposed to do. So, for example, I remember a time of it was a contract. I did all this evaluation work, and I didn't get past it. I wasn't going to turn it in. I said, man, I'm not giving them anything else because they didn't. He said, no, you do your part and let it play out. I found that works 100% of the time. And that comes from it. This whole piece, this vibration of just like, look, be in excellence all the time, and it's going to work out for you. Some things, who knows how it's going to go, but if you do your part, that it's going to work. So when you go to think about liberation, and it's like, no, it's not debatable. Like, even like the idea of Black Lives Matter, if I have to say Black Lives Matter, we got a problem. We have a problem. And people may say, like, why? Well, all lives matter, but if a house is burning, we got to put the fire where it's burning. You know what I mean? Like, so it's some things that we just have to know as premise or look like, you know, that's why I say shared humanity. We have to know what we're in it for. Like, what is our life energy? What's the purpose of our life energy? You know, outside of survival, because surviving and thriving are so different. If you're used to just having to survive, you may never know what thriving is. It's just like, look, I'm just trying to pay my bills. I don't know. I can't even think about liberation and all that because it's everything. Like, you know, it's everything. Like it's our freedom is, and this is for everybody on the planet. It's not just for me or a particular group. Everybody gets to have that. Everybody gets to have food. Everybody gets to have shelter. Everybody gets to have health. Everybody gets to have education. It's for everybody. It's not just for a select group of people, but, you know, let's be the model for that. Let's create that model. And you say it enough. Like, I play a lot of reggae. My son used to hate it. He's like, you want to play certain like gangster rap. And so I was like, I play reggae. And now he knows the lyrics and stuff that he's like, he just be saying along. He's like, it's in my head. Like, you know. So, you know, we got to get it in their head. Like, you know, get in their head, get good vibrations, you know, and then maybe let that be the vibe that we go with.
I've got a question. So you talk a lot about vibration of love, right? And how you kind of have to channel that and access that. But I guess, how do you do that when, I guess, you're surrounded by hate and anger all the time? So like, what are the steps you take to? Because I think of, you know, like you're saying, shared humanity and things like that. And I think of the principle of like, you have to like love your enemy, right? So, how do you do that?
Yeah. It's interesting. That's why I said that, you know, love is something really, really interesting about love and powerful about love, that it really does have the power to transform every energy. And it's hard to hate somebody that loves you. I don't care what, you know, you can try your best, but it's really hard to hate somebody that's vibrating in love. It really is. And not that we're not going to experience it, but I try my best not to be pulled into that universe, so to speak. So if I'm in a universe of love, you got to pull me into hate. And then if I'm there, then now you got me. So I think the strength is in knowing that the courage of being a warrior, like you can be a warrior in love, just like you can be a warrior in hate. Like, people, I get criticized for not having a gun. How you gonna protect your family? I was like, look, like I really believe that I'm good. I'm good, like, and I say, no, I'm not gonna, whatever it is not, I'm not in that vibration, and I haven't needed a gun. And I also said if I gotta camouflage myself like the environment and kill an animal, then, I probably need therapy, But yeah.
Well, we've kept you a long time, and
This is fun, man. I appreciate your energy. Like, it's to me it resonates as hope. Like, knowing that people care about this, and not just for the sake of it's a bigger picture about it, and so I really appreciate the energy that you put into this.
Thank you. Well, so far, I mean, all three of the narratives, your life story, Bob Seeley's life story, Tony Cohen, the continuity is hope, is looking out for each other, love, helping someone in need, and not thinking, oh, I'm just too busy for that, and just the whole, like Tony Cohen walked us through these really intricate transactions. I hate to use the term, but like, and then you said, okay, you get a message. You have to have room for 16 people. Can you imagine today, like, if you called me and said, Paul, and you'd have room for 16 people, I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.